Let's do the thing.
It's happening.
Let's do the thing. Well, you started telling me yesterday about how I think the irony of the timing of this conversation, and you left me on a cliffhanger. So
You had to stay all night long. You had to worry about what was it that Roger was trying to tell me.
I didn't sleep a wink.
So, Nick, I was telling you a story about how, for followers of the show, they'll know the story already about like I never wanted to be seen as the salesperson, just not who I am. So this show has always been about the mechanics of being a salesperson, right? So, and I think more so now more than ever, as the Great Resignation forces people into making decisions about what they really want to do with their lives. And many of those people in that decision making are thinking about, well, maybe I should do something for myself, which is great. Many of us should be an entrepreneur, but that doesn't mean that you know how to sell.
Mm-hmm.
And there is mechanics that go into the discipline of being a salesperson that I've always felt like the So You're in Sales podcast has been really all about, is digging into how can you set yourself up for success by studying other people who have figured out a way to make what they do stand out from their competition in their own marketplace. Fair?
Mm-hmm.
Makes sense?
Totally.
Right? So what I've come to recognize and appreciate is that I have a very unique value proposition and a key differentiator that's based around purpose. Okay. And I think it's high time that this show stopped just focusing on sales as a discipline and started examining how do businesses and entrepreneurs who are using purpose as their key differentiator stand out in the marketplace. So maybe Nick Kristock knows a little bit about this topic because of your prologue and everything that came into, like, you were a competitor. Well, we're going to let you kind of tell the story about how you arrived at what you've arrived at. However, I know that you, as well as anyone, understands why a purpose-led strategy can serve you well in things like, I don't know, a pandemic, a global supply chain meltdown, all of the things that have been happening to us as business people in the last 24 to 36 months have really forced a number of people to really decide, like, why am I in business? Why am I here? What is it about what we do that would make people want to support us through what has been a hellish time in commerce?
Mm-hmm.
So having framed that, I want you to give a little, so tell the people about your backstory, Nick, and kind of how you arrived at what it is that you do for a living. Because I think these two topics are very, very, very well aligned.
I love it. Great setup there. And thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man.
Born and raised in Michigan, so Midwest roots, right? And we know what that is. Always knew, like, I always had a desire to just be involved in as many things as I possibly could and ask 1,000 questions a day. And that was my nature growing up. Very curious to a fault, always trying to be involved in anything I could.
Mm-hmm.
Soccer and hockey were my thing. Played those through high school, soccer and hockey into college. And when I got to the end of college, all the opportunities in front of me here in the US were all just me fitting into expectations that other people had of what I was going to do with my life. And none of them were the doors that I wanted to walk through.
Yeah, man.
Door opened up to play soccer overseas in Australia. I didn't know a soul on the continent. Really had only, heard about it in books or movies, and knew there was some kangaroos and crazy things like that. And took this opportunity and said, you know what, this is the only door that isn't one of these here. So I'm going to do it. And I got on a plane and with a one-way ticket, moved to Australia, to a continent where I didn't know a soul, and had a career in soccer, and went with a 1-year deal, just wanted to get away for a year and really figure myself out. could have never prepared myself for what it takes to build a life from scratch when you don't know anyone. And I got 8 months into a 9 month season, woke up one morning, and I know like a lot of life doesn't happen in a moment. It's a accumulation of moments, but it was truly a moment for me. I woke up one morning and said, holy smokes, I've got a month left and I am no closer to figuring out what I want to do with my life. That week, the team put another year contract across the table, and I didn't even call home. I just signed it right away because I knew I needed to come back. And that second season, when I came back, I stepped back into the life that I had built and was able to really just spend my time on the things that were important to me. And that was the philanthropic space. So I started volunteering with 5 different organizations every day of the week. I was either working with kids in the hospital or serving our homeless friends on the street. And through putting my time into that, like anything, what you give your time to, your heart goes with you. I just knew that I needed to be in the social impact space. So moved back to Michigan in 2015, got a text message from my twin sister as I'm landing in the US. Hey, when you get a free minute, can you make a blanket for a kid in the hospital? Start asking questions because that's what I do. How many blankets do you need? How often do you need them? Her answers back to me, always need blankets, change the room, never have enough. And I'm like, wait a second, you're one of the best hospitals in the country. What do you mean you don't have enough of something you need? Pick up the phone, call every hospital in the state of Michigan. Everyone gives me the same answers. And I said, not rocket science. Let's just figure out how many kids go to the hospital. And let's make that many blankets. And even more than just the color and comfort, when Roger makes a blanket, he should be able to make a video message. And that should travel to Chloe in the hospital because I saw how badly these kids needed connection. And so looked around. There wasn't a tool that allowed me to do that at scale. So jumped on Code Academy, grabbed a buddy, and we built one ourselves just for us to use. And that is what really took Fleece and Thank You off, was this concept of I can see the blanket maker and the blanket recipient in the exchange. And
Yeah.
organizations started reaching out, asking if they could use that tool. And that started a multi-year journey that then segued into its own technology company called Kind Catch. And today I get the absolute privilege to be the CEO and founder of both companies and lead amazing teams on both sides that do things that are just far greater than one person could do alone.
Welcome to the show, sir. This is exactly the right person to be here. All right. So notes, we always take notes, right? Okay. So this one's pretty simple. So here I have on one side of the sheet, entrepreneurship, on the other side, social entrepreneurship. Okay. So what a great, you started your career with this idea in mind. All right. So here's what I wrote. Here's what an entrepreneur does. They identify a gap. They create a scalable system. They develop relevant marketing, and they execute like crazy. Whether you're a social entrepreneur or just a traditional entrepreneur, that does not change.
Mm-hmm.
That's the beautiful part about this paradox is regardless of what you're doing from an alignment perspective, the structure of what you need to do to be successful does not change. However, the result is what's different. For the traditional entrepreneur, it's dollars. We're after dollars. We're using the gap that we've identified as a way to maybe create some wealth. What's the difference in social entrepreneurship? You know this as well as anyone. How does that differ from the traditional entrepreneur?
I think the destination is a different destination, right? And you know the destination from the day you start in a lot of cases, and that's what you're pushing towards. And so for me, you can't build a business if it's not sustainable. And a sustainable business is one that is profitable, no matter what industry you're in, for profit and nonprofit. And we can take the hood off of nonprofits in that structure at any point in this conversation. I love doing that because there's a stigma there. But every business that can stick around for more than 12 months is profitable in some way. It's just a question of, is profitability the ultimate destination, or is profitability a step to the final destination of what good are we going to do in the world? And I think that at its highest point, the destination of a social impact business has a different destination that doesn't end at profitability.
And as someone who began this journey prior to the current socioeconomic political climate, in your opinion, how have those attitudes changed towards social enterprise in this period in your mind?
Something interesting. I mean, we're all the pandemic was one where, I mean, everyone had an opinion, and it was just which opinion was louder, right? So take my opinion with a grain of salt, whoever's listening to this. But this is what I saw over the last 24 months. What I saw was a world where a traumatic, global event happens, and it causes you to look inward for a moment, and then it what's come out of it is a world where people are hyper focused on prioritizing their time on the things that matter to them. And what that results in is a category of consumer, a customer, a donor, whatever it is to a business, that is so hyper personalized in the choices that they make, that as a business, on the business side, we have to respond to that with the way that we talk to them, with hyper personalized communication and marketing. Because if we don't, they're just not interested anymore in being mass marketed to. They're not interested in mass messaging. They want to know, why do my values align with your values? Because since the pandemic, I really only want to spend my time on the people and things that my values align with. And I only want to spend my dollars on those things too. And that's the shift that I think we're seeing. And so for a business, you have to rise to the occasion and be hyper personalized in your messaging, but appeal to some different destination than just a product that is a good price and someone gets, some superficial value from it. You just got to reach for something higher than that, or I think you'll just miss the boat.
The long-term viability is really, to me, what I've witnessed in this period is you can still transactionally get by. Like, there's still going to be people who will stop by for a minute and pick up what you're selling, but their commitment to your success doesn't exist. On the flip, there's, if I, as a consumer, can identify personally with your values as an organization because I can see them, I'm going to spend more, I'm going to stick around longer, and I'm probably going to bring you some other people.
Mm-hmm.
Because, hey, Nick, have you met Roger? I know that from our time together that our values are in alignment, and I've found this guy. So let me bring you over to him because I know that you're going to benefit in the same way that I am from what that person is doing. And when I'm talking to my consulting clients, what I'm trying to express to them is you won't always lose if you don't adopt this position. But in those instances where you're competing against someone who has, that's when you're going to get your butt kicked, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen examples of this in your travels? Like, especially on the fleece and thank you side, are you seeing a change in like the nature of the discussions that people are approaching you with?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I totally see now we are in, like, it is a retention game in my opinion right now. It is a retention game. Like, there are a lot of businesses that can get a customer in, to your point, but it is so short term. And so the conversations that we're having as a team here are where they used to be maybe 80-20, 80 of how do we bring in new donors. It's like 50-50, if not starting to swing to the balance of, hey, we know we can bring in a Roger, but we have to be passionately obsessed with how we can keep Roger into the fold.
Yep.
Because pre-pandemic, and I think there was this big shift, pre-pandemic, the sea was wide and people could transact and somewhat still be in your sphere, but I really feel like the sphere shrunk.
Yep.
Meaning you now have to find the people that are just so passionate about what you do and keep them in your sphere, or they're just going to go to another sphere and never come inside yours again. And I do think that we see that in the donors that we work with and, the customers that we transact with on the Kind Catch side.
And they'll leave and not even tell you why. And it is, the business person in me is puzzled because I'm used to developing a relationship. So if this opportunity is transactional in nature and you don't stick around, that, like, I feel that.
Mm-hmm.
And your departure to me is noteworthy, not because you left, but because I didn't get a chance to find out why.
Mhm.
Right. And so in the book, for those of you who don't know, Roger wrote a book. We talk about the know, like, trust continuum. Okay. So the age old adage in sales is people buy from people they know, like, and trust. But that adage is so universally agreed upon that most people don't even think about what that statement really means, much less consider how does one go from know to like to trust. And for those who may even give it some thought, a lot of people consider it to be a linear process. So I'm just, by nature of just pure interaction, we're going to go from one to the next to the next. And I know that you've known people for a long time that you don't trust.
Mhm.
And there's no amount of time in the world that's going to build a trust-based relationship between you and that person because your values are not in alignment. It's clear from their messaging that their values and your values do not align. So you may keep them in your orbit.
Mhm.
They never get to a place where they've earned that vaunted position, which is the trust spot. And so, Nick, you got called on during the pandemic. You got cold called. How did that feel?
Yeah, it felt like they didn't know my destination, right? Like, the if you yeah, didn't know my destination. If I wanna go somewhere and you pull up in the car, Roger, and the direction you wanna go is completely opposite of the one I'm going, it's like, I I'm probably gonna be polite and say, "Thanks for offering," but, I'm just not going in that direction, so it's just, it's his.
And for me, that whole period of time where we had those interactions with people that had not achieved a level of trust with us that we felt was requisite for the kind of conversation that that person wanted to have. And no knock on that person, they were just trying to do their job. But what hadn't happened was there's no system in place for that person to recognize where am I on this no like trust continuum to understand what my activities should be with a prospect in this moment. Because if you're a life insurance salesperson and you cold call me when a member of my family has COVID and is on their deathbed, I'm not happy. Not happy. So it created sort of a flashpoint of I can be a little bit more aggressive towards you in my disdain for your practice because the veneer of professionalism had been removed because of the pandemic.
Mhm.
And what we saw was Nick and Roger and every other person in the world who needed to do a transaction during that very high stakes period. We only did business with people we had the utmost trust in,
Mhm.
right? And so there lies this amazing opportunity in sales right now, based on where we're at and what's going on in life, to recognize and appreciate that if you can build trust based activities that give you the opportunity to have people see you for what you really want them to see you for, it's actually amplified itself to the point where you and I just attended an event where we saw trust based relationships flourishing because people had done the work to create the relationships to allow themselves the opportunity to be in that situation for you in what you're doing. Because I think you're an interesting example because you have your for profit hat and then you have your nonprofit hat. Where have you seen the manifestation of what I'm talking about in either side of what you do? Like, do you have some examples of what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think it's, what's really interesting is that sales 10 years ago, obviously a totally different definition than today. I just look at myself as, like I'm on this, uh, expedition of discovery, and I'm just really looking under rocks and around corners to find people that are going to the same place I'm going to, and letting them know that, we can go there together, type of thing. And when I find people that are not going to that destination, wish them well and know that if they need help, they can call. But so, all that to say, I think in the last 12 months for sure, I have less thought about I need to sell as many people as I can, and more thought about I need to invest my time into finding communities and people that I know are going to the same destination, getting into the conversation, adding value in any way I can add value. And then the business will, my business will grow because of that. And I don't know if that's a vague answer, but it's what's on my heart to say. It's like I really feel like I'm just on a discovery of, cool, are you going to the same destination as me? Awesome. How can I help you get there quicker? Because then I'll get there quicker.
Well, gosh, how I got to think about the right way to frame this. So it kind of goes back to, and it's so odd that we keep coming back to this one word, transactional versus relational. And through nature, through nurture, through training, through management, through business strategy, most salespeople have been trained in a transactional mindset. Quotas, quota in and of itself is a transactional construct. Like you need to do a certain amount of productivity in order to achieve a level of success that allows you the opportunity to continue to work for me.
Mhm.
Versus, I know with certainty that there is a community of people who would buy what I sell if they only knew about us. And if I, as the steward of the sales effort within my organization, can find those people, that does not begin the transaction. It begins the relationship.
Mhm.
And if we can just get people to move in the direction of understanding where you are in this know, like, trust continuum, so that you know what activities as a relationship builder you should be focused upon in that moment, you give yourself the best opportunity possible to be able to build the relationship that could ultimately yield itself to business. Because what you and I know, Nick, is when we are in each other's company, we're not talking about the business that we're going to do with one another. We're talking about the things that are building our relationship.
Mhm.
Right. And it's hard because if you need a paycheck, if you're like you got bills and you need those commission dollars, and the only way to do that is to close some business, I get it. But if you haven't done the work up front to create an opportunity to recognize where am I with what group of people, that if I need to get some orders today, whom have I built the requisite level of trust with that I could make that kind of phone call and say, hey, Nick, I'm in a spot right now where I could use some of your dollars. Are you comfortable with giving them to me at this juncture?
Mhm.
And if we've not worked on everything that's necessary up front to put me in that position, think about the way the nature of that conversation changes.
Mhm.
So for us as practitioners of that, I think where the magic is can you appreciate and recognize the need to play a long game,
Mhm. Long,
right?
for sure. I talk about the long play every week. Yep.
So expound, like what if you were sitting in the opposite chair, what would you be talking about from that perspective?
Yeah, the long play for sure is a give, 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 ask mentality.
Yeah.
You can't move the ask out of order in that. Like I think I said give 5 times there, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the long play at its core, right? And we're in a world when we talk about purpose, what's also interesting, Roger, is the whole, I'd say a majority of the world now is more focused on purpose. But what that's also shown us is that a lot of people hadn't taken much time at all to even think about what their purpose was.
Right.
And so now we've got a whole nother element of the conversation where it's not just about me finding people who I share purpose and destination with. I also have to be really tactful in how I communicate my purpose so that it can connect with someone who's out there. And there are a lot of people out there. And some days I'm one of them of who wake up and say, like, gosh, I know I have so much more to give. And like this world's gotta be just bigger than what's going on right now, but I just don't know what the purpose is. I don't know my destination. And
Yeah.
so that's a whole nother segment of the conversation of that. But yeah, it's an interesting time, that's for sure.
And you can almost sense it on people now that maybe someone who was completely oblivious to this pre-pandemic, you can see people on their journeys to recognize like, okay, like the way I was doing stuff is not working now.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've got to figure out, because I'm in pain over the fact that my previous approach is no longer effective. It's creating impetus for change, but many people aren't in a clear spot to understand, like, okay, what the hell should I do? to so
And
for
let me bring that, as you talked, the idea itself finally closed the circle, Roger,
okay,
which is that give, 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 ask. If ask is out of order on the first, like on the first and second give, someone maybe didn't know their purpose yet, right? But it wasn't until my third or fourth give that they said, "Oh, yeah, actually, I do share the same destination as you, Nick." And that's why the ask came after the fifth, give. But if
yeah.
the ask had been before the first or second give, they didn't know yet. And so that's the long play right there, summed up.
So you've watched me do this. So we actually teach this, that there's a cadence to it. And the way we teach it is value, value, request, value, value, request, big value, big request,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I may want you to come to a conference that I'm going to be speaking at in 90 days. So I need to have a series of contacts built that I'm doing things for you in hopes that eventually I can get you to come participate with me in that big event, because I know if I'm able to do that, that our relationship's going to solidify itself in a way that can move the discussion to a place that I want it to go. But not until we get there should I spend any time trying to convince you
Mm-hmm.
that that's where we need things to go. But where most people struggle is, even if they know their purpose, even if they have a strong sense of their why, they don't have the mechanics worked out of what that's supposed to look like. And so what you and I get as a result is a disjointed effort,
Mm-hmm.
to the point where it starts to not really make any sense. Like, what's even going, like, before, if you were just pitching me all the time, I could write that off as like, okay, you've been trained in that and that's what you're doing at school. But now you come and you share your vision with me, and then I'm expecting you to show me something that's going to be a reflection of the fact that you want to reinforce that you have this vision, and then you go straight to pitch. It's worse.
Mm-hmm.
It's worse, right?
It's
So exercises, places on the internet. I mean, what would be your advice to someone who, if we just describe them and they're like, "Oh my God, that's me," like, what would be your advice to that person?
oh gosh. Um, I think so. If there's someone who gets the value request out of order, right? If I'm talking to that person, I think that it's probably an identity crisis, right? Like, make sure you know your value, make sure you know your destination, make sure you know your purpose if you want to even have a shot at attracting people to transact with you at some point that
Right.
share that value or purpose. So, step one is that. And the easiest way to know your core values is to make a list of the 5 people in your life that are closest to you, and underneath each of their names, write 5 adjectives about that person. You have now a list of 25 words. Your core values are in that list, and you pick out the top 5 from that list, and that is who you are, and you write that on your heart, and you speak that every day. Like, that is the best first step that I would give to someone who says, "I don't really know my North Star right now." That's the easiest way to figure it out. 5 closest people in your life, 5 adjectives of each one. Somewhere on that list of 25 words are your 5 core values.
29 minutes and 22 seconds into the conversation, and we just gave you the keys to the kingdom right there. The 5 people, the 5 adjectives, and you're right. There are themes that are going to reveal themselves in that exercise, that in the examination of those words, you're going to start to see the theme, to the point where you go like, "Hey, these are the reason why I gravitate towards these people," because those adjectives, when collected and examined, you're going to identify with a key number of those that you're going to go, yep, that's exactly it. So right at the 30-minute mark, we're going to conclude the audio portion of the So You're in Sales podcast. Nick, thank you for that. So because I'm a great editor, I can tell you this while we're recording so that I can surprise you with the thing I should have told you even when we were having the trouble yesterday. One of the pieces of the bonus content is you get to ask me a question.
Amazing.
So this is supposed to be that moment when you already know the question that you wanted to ask me. So if you need to think about this, this is your Jeopardy music opportunity to think about it. Or if you got it, and we can do it.
I'm going to be intentional with this. So I'm going to take a couple of seconds to make sure I phrase it right.
Ooh, now you're scaring me. He's thinking too hard on this one. It's going to be a hard question.
Okay, I think I'm there.
Okay.
My question for you, Roger, is what in your journey of the So You're in Sales podcast and even outside of that, in your sales and relationships journey, what has caused you to change your mind with the greatest force at some point in your journey? Was it an event, a story, an experience? Would you say is something that caused the biggest change of mind, and what was that change of mind?
Ooh, okay. So I'm super competitive, and I struggled in the early stages of my sales career with reconciling that conflict that I felt about what it meant to be in sales versus whatever the win is, whatever we've identified as success. I'm going to get there come hell or high water because I won't commit to the activity unless I'm committed to the outcome. And it was because of my competitive nature that I had to reconcile how to arrive at a way to be successful that would not make me feel crappy about myself. And what I watched was many of my peers who were having success that was fueling my competitive spirit, treating people the wrong way to get to their destination. It was never about the people that we were serving. It was always about the person that was in control of the transaction. And I hated how that felt. Just hated it. Because what I sort of felt like was, I can do the job for you and do it well and make you feel good about what happened in the process. You'd go tell all of your friends, oh my God, what an amazing experience I just had. And I sort of hoped that the universe would reward me for making that investment in that manner. And this is, remember, my sales career predates the internet. So salespeople had all the power. We could tell you whatever, and there was really no way for you to verify or reveal us for the fraud that we may have been in that moment because the information just wasn't available. So the internet had a way of fixing that for us. But for me, what survived the change from pre-internet sales to post-internet sales is that idea of, if I make you feel good about what happened between us. Actually, now, because of the internet, the opportunity for that to pay itself back to you has amplified in an explosive kind of way. But at the end of the day, what I'm still doing in everything that I'm, from a business, entrepreneurship, even life perspective, is the people who are treating other people poorly is I want to beat them. I want to win. I want to succeed in spite of their efforts, because what I want to do is for other entrepreneurs, salespeople, people who want to do it the way we want to do it. what I want them to see is you can have wild success doing it this way. So we have to document our successes and share them with people so that when they're at that moment of like their decision making is in the balance about which approach they're going to take, I need there to be a body of evidence to suggest that you can do it this way, so that if people are at that moment making that choice, they can see the path. And so our success in many ways is kind of like we're trying to be the standard bearer and the, carrying this message to the marketplace to say, you can do it this way and be very successful in the process.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of where we all, and it's sort of like when, and I've shared this with other people before, and it's like, it's kind of like a giggle moment. Like it's still about winning,
Mm-hmm.
but winning the right way.
For sure.
Right. Winning the right way. So
thanks for answering that question. I think it's very powerful to learn what changes someone's mind and why. And I think it's important to be open to having your mind changed, but be strong in your convictions. And so appreciate you answering that.
yeah, we'll leave it at this. And I'm willing to say it. I feel like this is kind of a profoundly sad time in our society. Like there's a lot of things that are wrong right now. So I feel, and I'm sure you do too, Nick, I feel a responsibility to carry the light every day.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it's necessary. It's important that there's people out there fighting for good on a day in and day out basis, because I can assure you that there's people out there fighting for not good
Mm-hmm.
on a day in and day out basis. So we call ourselves goodness warriors. Like we're willing to fight for good. And I feel like it's never really been more important than it is today to do that. And so thank you for asking me that question. It gave me an opportunity to articulate something that maybe listeners to the show ordinarily wouldn't have known. If you wanted people to learn more about what it is that you're up to, where should we send folks?
Yeah, the last thing to add to your darkness and light comment, like darkness is the absence of light. So the only way darkness prevails is if light doesn't show up. And I feel that same responsibility. We have to show up with our light every day. And that's how we win in the end. If you're looking to support a child in the hospital and get connected with one of them, make a blanket for Fleece and Thank You. Go to fleeceandthankyou.org, big order kits button at the top. Get a kit shipped right to your home. We do a family of 2 at Thanksgiving to a corporation of 2,000 across the country or world. On the Kind Catch side, radically obsessed with how organizations collect and share video and breaking down the barriers there to just move it at lightning pace. And so always happy to connect on that. If you're an organization listening that says, hey, we want to use more video, just really don't know how to overcome that heavy lift of video, we could just make it fast and easy. So those would be the 2 ways to connect with me. And as far as my destination where I'm going, and if someone else is going there, let's link up, is I see a world in the future where every single child in the hospital gets a colorful fleece blanket and a video message waiting on the bed for them when they start their treatment. And every organization, from a small mom and pop shop that started yesterday to the largest of large organizations in the world, have the ability to connect with authentic user-generated video to their sphere, which we said their sphere is getting smaller and smaller and tighter. And video is going to be the way that we reach that sphere. So radically obsessed with both of those. And those are the destinations that I'm headed towards.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. And I, for one, have been super inspired by Nick's story and what he's been able to accomplish. So if you're like me and you're at all curious about this conversation, you're going to go out and do your internet research. It's going to lead you to places that you're just going to enjoy the hell out of. Mm-hmm. So Nick, thanks so much for joining us, man, and helping me make the case for why purpose really is the key differentiator in sales, which is really where we're taking this particular piece of content for the future. So thanks for being the first one, man. You're the guy.
Thanks for letting me be part of the conversation.